When you find yourself feeling defensive, it's important to really stop and pay attention to what's going on. So, one of the big things that happens when we are defensive is we completely shut down and stop listening to the feedback that we're being given. Now, this is a huge opportunity for us to really reclaim our power, because if we operate from that place of defensiveness, we're giving away our power and giving away our power to make new choices. So what happens is our ego does not like being wrong. And we will go into this space of having to defend our perspective, our belief systems, and our model of the world. And we will either lash out at other people, or we will completely shut down and stop communicating. Now, when our ego feels threatened and our model of the world feels threatened, we will defend it and double down without having any kind of consideration for any facts or evidence being presented. Or we have the opportunity to really stop and listen and look at where our choices, where our behaviors, and where our own internal models of the world are creating these situations so that we have the opportunity to change them. When we do so, we reclaim our power and we're able to recognize where somebody else's opinions and models of the world are distorting our intentions, and where our own models of the world are distorting our outcomes and intentions, right? If we keep fighting back and keep lashing out and don't actually pause to listen to what somebody has to say, then we will find ourselves in this conflict cycle where we're constantly engaging in a conflict with other people and unable to actually grow and evolve and expand who we are as a person. And eventually, over time, that conflict becomes extremely aggressive and reactive, where it's not safe to be in that space with that person because you're just constantly pushing and pushing and pushing against each other. Or you'll end up completely pulling apart and separating without actually resolving the issue that was being presented, which means that you're going to repeat that same thing with a completely different person. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about this week was that defensiveness and how we can re-empower ourselves and work through it. So make sure that you're staying tuned if you want to read the full blog article about this and how to really navigate through defensiveness. Make sure that you click the link in my bio on the link tree and go to the button that says blogs. So that being said, our challenge is it's very easy for us to fall into feeling defensive and attacked. When we feel that way, we lash out or shut down, right? But when we lash out or shut down, we stop hearing what the other person has to say. Stop hearing everything. You're probably, if you think about past situations, you'll notice that you don't really remember much of what they had to say to begin with. You were already planning what you were going to say next to further the argument, to further defend yourself. So you've lost that opportunity to really see where your choices created that situation and where your personal responsibility lies. Now, the chances of you having 100% responsibility are very slim because we tend to operate with our best intentions in mind, trying to do the best that we can with the resources we have in each moment. So we don't usually go about our lives trying to hurt others or with the intention of hurting others unless we feel defensive, right? So it's important to keep that in mind and understand that the same applies to the other person. When we are in this space of feeling attacked and feeling defensive, or if we're communicating an issue to somebody else, it's important to really pay attention to the words and the tone and the body language that we're using, because if we immediately come at someone and make them feel defensive or feel attacked, the exact same thing applies to them. They cannot hear you. Anything that you're trying to say will not be heard. So when I'm talking about and teaching communication to my clients, that's one of the things that I always point out is you cannot come at them from a "you did this" or "how dare you" type of approach. You have to really stop and say, I know that you didn't intend this acknowledging their intentions first, and then talk about how the outcome itself impacted you, right? And when you start to do that and you start to really give yourself space to process what's being said and come back and respond later, you'll find that other people start to follow and apply the same things in their relationships with you. So as you lead and show them what you want and set that new tone, most people will follow along. If they don't, then that means it's time to reevaluate the relationship. So again, our challenge is working through that fear and not taking things so personally, because when an issue arises, it's both our own internal models of the world and perceptions, as well as that person's internal models of the world and perceptions. And communication means that we both have to come together and be able to share those different perspectives and find where they actually align and meet, versus insisting that your way and your perspective is the only right way. It's always going to be somewhere in the middle, right? So both points can be true. And when we let go of that fear of being wrong and that fear of doing something wrong, and the shame of I am wrong and something about me shouldn't be there and shouldn't be present, right? When we let go of the attachment to that shame and that guilt, it gives us this huge opportunity to deepen our relationships and learn how to communicate in a more effective way. So again, our challenge is really letting go of that fear and that need to be right, and just pause and listen and evaluate what they are actually saying. What part of that is true for me? So when we're looking at gaining clarity, right, it's important to understand that our ego and our mind are hardwired to defend our worldview to the bitter end. Now, on the extreme side of things, you'll see fanatical people. And I'll use an example from my own perspective. But we have these religious fanatics that come to the Polk County market, and they will protest and scream and insist that their way is the right way, and how dare you. Now, there are tons and tons of Christians that come to these markets that have a more open perspective, right? Versus the closed, narrow-minded view that the fanatics have. So when you're fanatical, you are narrow-mindedly pursuing one idea. It is right no matter what. You refuse to see any evidence contrary. When you are open-minded, even to some degree, you can be different degrees of open and receptive to different ideas, right? So when you're open-minded, you're able to consider those different perspectives and how they relate and apply to you. But being fanatical, you will not hear anything different. It doesn't matter if you have like stacks of evidence to the contrary. Think of abortion and anti-vaccinations and again, religion and so many other issues that are really hot topics these days, right? If you try to have a conversation about that, they will completely shut you down. And that is the extreme version of this defensiveness, right? Again, we're hardwired to defend our model of the world and how we understand and see the world around us and how we believe that it works, okay? But it also happens in very subtle ways where, your significant other approaches you and lets you know that their feelings were hurt when you made a remark that you thought was joking and lighthearted, but they took it personally because they have their own issues that and their own stories that then took what you said and twisted it into something that was mean or spiteful. Now, your intention wasn't to be that way, but the outcome was still that way. So both pieces of that are true. And for you and your significant other to actually work through and resolve that conflict, you have to both honor what parts are true for you and what parts are true for the other person, and be willing to hold space for those truths, even if they don't match your own. So, that being said, right, it can happen in so many different ways. And when we double down, we stop listening, we stop considering, and we stop growing, right? I always welcome different perspectives, different ideas, different understandings of the world, because it helps me look at and evaluate what my default setting is and look at where I could adjust it more and expand it more, right? So if you look at lifestyles and how you grow up, if your parents were extremely religious and they believed that you were, let's say, Baptist, right? And you were automatically a sinner by birth and you were going to hell and you had to repent your whole life and Jesus was your only savior, that is going to shape how you approach life the rest of your time here, unless you expand your perspective, right? So if you were to expand your perspective and honor that, maybe I'm not bad by default, right? Maybe I'm doing the best that I can and I have the capacity to grow. Cool. Or you lean into the Bible or different texts and learn more about yourself and what is true for you. That gives you the ability to expand and grow. But if you are locked into a specific belief, a specific idea or theory about how the world works and how the world works and just basically like how other people operate. There we go. That's what I wanted to say. Then you will find yourself completely stuck in the same position. And if you're stuck in the same position, you will experience the same things every single day. You will not have a change in experience. You will find tons of conflict and everybody's against you and everybody thinks that you're wrong, and all of these other models and beliefs and ideas will start to accumulate and pile on. And that then in turn impacts your self-esteem and your approaches in interacting with other people, right? So you see how this can become a huge issue and how this one little thing of being defensive and how we respond can change so much within our lives. So I want you to really think about that as you are going through your day when you feel defensive, So the opportunity that's now being presented, now that you're aware of this, right? And aware of our default settings to fear being wrong, to fear being questioned, to be forced to consider different perspectives and points. If you find yourself feeling defensive, take a breath, calm yourself. If you are not in the headspace to have a difficult conversation, ask that person to come back later. Or you can take it upon yourself to say, hey, I don't have the capacity for this conversation right now. Can we re-engage about this, say tomorrow, or whenever you expect that you will have more capacity to really process and understand what that person is saying. If you've had a long, stressful day, you do not want to enter into a conversation that may be challenging or hard to hear. So once you've gotten into that space where you have the ability to really listen and hear and you're calm, try to actually focus on the words that are being spoken and listen to them. Do not plan any kind of response until that person has finished saying what they've needed to say. Then take a moment to process and think about those words and ask yourself, what part of this is true for me? And how could this person perceive this situation in this way? What is their truth within that, right? Look at what choices did I make that contributed to this situation? Where am I personally responsible for my choices or behaviors that contributed to this? Don't take 100% accountability, because our experiences are a joint manifestation from all parties involved, right? So it's never going to be 100% you. That being said, so look at where you can take personal accountability for those aspects. If you need time to fully process and think through these things, let that person know. Give them feedback. What I think you were telling me is, and repeat back a summary in your own words, and then let them know, I need time to process and think about this before I respond. Can I get back to you in, and then give them a time frame. So when you do that, it allows that other person to feel heard and respected and understood. It opens up lines of communication. If you just straight up go into defensiveness, it's going to continue that conflict cycle. You're not able to step back and look at where the choices need to be changed, where the accountability is within your life and your perspective. And that person doesn't feel heard. So the chances of them coming to you with issues later on are very, very slim. And then when communication breaks down, the relationship breaks down. You start losing trust. You start losing that sense of connection and understanding with one another. So then the relationship becomes more and more tumultuous the more it goes on. So as you start to really do this and allow that person to feel heard and understood, then you will start to deepen that relationship and that connection and find that your relationships become more peaceful, more prosperous. Now, if you yourself consistently do not feel heard, it's always great to practice these things and check for personal capacity before you engage in a difficult conversation, and to give yourself space to process and repeat and give them feedback as to what you thought you understood based off of what they were communicating, and apply these pointers so that the other person then has a model to try to replicate, right? And the more you consistently do this, the more you start to teach other people around you how to do this as well. Now, there might be times where people just aren't willing to change and they're stuck in that defensiveness, right? So that's where boundaries come into place. And in some cases, you may have to cut ties with certain people just because they're no longer beneficial when it comes to relationships. There is no more growth at that point if they are not willing to really stop and listen and look at what's true for them versus what's true for you. Okay, so once you have really started to process this, it's important to really come up and readdress it and be consistent. If you said, let's talk about this tomorrow after I have a chance to process it, then make sure you follow up with that person. Even if you're not quite ready yet, let them know, hey, I didn't really have a lot of space to process this. I'm not ready to talk yet. Can I follow up with you tomorrow or whenever you expect that you'll have time? I would encourage you to not delay it more than absolutely necessary, and be completely transparent if you are delaying it. Otherwise, it can look like you're just avoiding it. And it's important to really be honest if you are. You might actually be avoiding it. So when you have, it's important to come back and really look at, this was my intention. This is where I find my personal responsibility lies within the situation. I recognize that the intended outcome was not what I expected or intended. And I recognize your feelings are on the matter. Here's how I'm going to change going forward. Here's what I'm going to do to address it, right? And make sure that you actually apologize with those things in mind. What are we going to do to fix the problem? How are we going to prevent it from happening again in the future, right? And honor where you find responsibility. Now, that person might see an aspect that you might have missed. Be open to it. Consider it. Again, what part of this is true for me? As you practice this more and more, you'll find that there's less and less conflict in your life, and that in turn creates less problems and less conflict in all types of aspects of your life, whether it's work or it's family or it's friendships or social groups, whatever it is. it will start to spread the more you integrate it into your entire life. So we have a choice when we are presented with something that is different than what we expected or what we believe to be true. We have a choice to really stop and listen and be receptive to the feedback that we receive, or we can double down and not hear a word and just stay stuck in exactly where we are and repeat the same choices, the same behaviors over and over again, and get the same experiences over and over again. Or again, you can break this cycle. It is something that I see consistently in my clients, and having that power to really pause and look at things and understand what parts are true for me versus what's true for them, and really look at where I can take responsibility, has been absolutely life-changing. So if you find that you are constantly in conflict with people around you, you constantly feel attacked or defensive, or you feel unheard, if you are trying to move mountains in your life and you are tired of hauling buckets of dirt one by yourself, schedule a call with me. If you go to the link in my bio, click Let's Talk, schedule here, and that will set you up with a consult call for me. This is just a very tiny facet of the things that I teach and help my clients integrate and figure out where that strategy, where that cycle comes up in their lives. So when we work together, we're able to very quickly find those things and work through them, and then make any necessary shifts so that you stop facing those same problems and those same cycles over and over again. And this is over a 6-month period that we work through every single one of those cycles, every single one of those challenges, and the results at the end are fantastic. I will share some testimonials later on this week if I get the opportunity. If not, you're welcome to go through my website and kind of peruse what we've got. Again, the link's in my bio. If you want to get a quick recap and overview, or just kind of read through it and keep it in mind, go to the link in my bio and click blogs. And that will bring you up to the full forecast with everything that we talked about, and kind of give you that walkthrough and that strategy to replace the old defensive strategy. So it's a great place to bookmark and come back to whenever you do find yourself in conflict. Okay, that's all I wanted to share regarding that, and I wish you all the best, and I hope to hear from you.